Hey. Welcome to episode 279 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Freeman, and today, the title of today's episode is Campaigning for Better. And today I'm talking to an urban planner who's also currently running for mayor. This gets me thinking, most of us these days, I guess for generations, have lived in towns and cities and in places of where our houses or apartments are in the towns or cities. We go to businesses in the towns or cities. We find entertainment. We do so much, but how often do we really think about, oh my gosh, there's a lot of planning that's gone into making this place, for better or for worse, what it currently is. And even more intriguing, what plans can be implemented in the future to improve this place. There's so many questions here, and as an avid walker and explorer of cities, I'm excited to talk with the urban planner, and yeah, you all are going to really like this guy. I believe. I hope you enjoy this conversation, and it gives you a lot to think about. Let me bring him on, but first, this.
Today's guest, Joe Batcheller.
So Joe, like, don't cities and towns kind of just plan themselves?
Well, you look at the evolution of cities, and, we've been, as a species, cohabitating with one another for thousands and thousands of years. And so, in a way, yes, they did for a long time. But when you look back at the really, I don't know, about 250 years ago is when you start to see like really kind of concerted urban planning efforts taken. And
That's fairly recently in the scope of time.
yeah, absolutely. Some of the biggest needs really that gave rise to the profession came about from the need for sewers. Once we had running water, and that had to be incorporated into buildings. And yes, that's an essential need, but a lot of things can go wrong if your plumbing isn't working. But back to about 1850 to the late 1900s, you start to see cities really focusing on creating infrastructure, real infrastructure, instead of just dirt roads where you had to bury pipe to get, for lack of a better word, the human waste out of the city. When you have that many people living together, that can create disease and so on. And then, there was a profit motive too for people that were building apartment buildings and so on. And cities became very densely packed, and people started to realize this isn't necessarily advancing humanity a whole lot when people have a hard time living on top of each other. And that gave rise to parks. And so there was a whole movement around incorporating parks into cities. And so that combination of, the need for infrastructure, the need for open spaces, just got the profession really off the ground, and people started to think, how should we develop cities? Do we need to be more intentional about it? And there's been a lot of new cities that have been developed over the last 150 years or so. And it's still happening to this day. It may be the result of, an oil boom in North Dakota, or it may be the result of, some kind of industry that really gives rise to the need for a city beyond just sort of a camp type setting that you might see that goes along with, certain industries. So you look at city departments, and there's a lot of departments that are focused on different things that make cities more livable places. So there is a lot that goes into cities. You need plans. You need everybody on the same page with what the vision is. How are all of those systems coordinated? And so it has become a lot more of a science now, rather than happenstance like it used to be for thousands of years. So yeah, little bit of history, a little bit of urban history there.
And thanks so much for that. And then there's also like this amazing dance between city government, federal and state regulations, private businesses, and individual homeowners. How does that all work in a town or a city?
Yeah, that's a great question. You've got a lot of different potential stakeholders with various issues, and how do you coordinate all of that? So, for example, you mentioned the federal government. A lot of times we see support from the federal government when in the form of grants and funding for streets and highways. A lot of that goes through state government. And, then states a lot of times might also have, additional regulations on top of what the normal constitution allows for how cities can develop, how they can operate within a state. Some states are very top down with how cities develop. Others are more kind of laissez-faire, where cities have quite a bit of autonomy. So it depends on the state that you're in. Oregon and Hawaii are examples where they have some statewide regulations. South Dakota is a little bit more laissez-faire. There's also the opportunity for cities to be a home charter, a home rule city, where they're not necessarily, the word I'm thinking of is subservient, but that's maybe not the best word, but we'll go with that for now. Subservient to the counties, if you will. So there is all kinds of layers of government. It all needs to be coordinated and streamlined. I don't know if there's necessarily one form or another that is the best within which cities can operate. But then, you also mentioned the private sector, businesses, and there needs to be coordination at the local level. Nonprofits play a huge role in cities as well. So we'll take my hometown, Sioux Falls, for example. We offer, the city government offers some funding to various nonprofits that are maybe focused in the economic development field, or it could be arts and culture. And a lot of cities do that. That's because those organizations, they can a lot of times be a lot more effective at serving the mission, enhancing the quality of life, whatever way that is, than the city would. And, when a lot of times cities, there's higher costs that go along with implementing what needs to be done in order to keep a city livable, enhance the quality of life, and so on. And so it's important to be very strategic in that regard. When it comes to development, one of the things that's become more and more popular over the years is public-private partnerships. And so that may include a nonprofit, but a lot of times what a public-private partnership is when city government will partner with, say, a developer, and to make a development happen, really, where it wouldn't happen if it was just the developer on their own, or if it was just the city trying to make something happen. So, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. It takes a lot of relationship building. It takes just good legal framework as well, and it's been an evolution for sure. So yeah, cities are just they're very complex and fascinating places.
The term urban sprawl has become a buzzword over I don't know how long, uh, like a few decades maybe. Or...
Yeah, I would say it really started probably in the 70s. You would see suburban sprawl kind of happening on the edge of the city, like cities really expanding
Oh
outward.
yeah, suburban sprawl. No, yeah.
No, that's fine. Yeah. So, and it's an interesting phenomenon, Jason, because that suburban life is something that a lot of people really enjoy. We're finding out though that there are a lot of costs that go along with it. More roads to maintain. There's more area of a city for police to patrol. More parks that need to be created, and library branches, and so on. And part of that is because part of the reason why there is suburban sprawl is because it's development has become kind of routine in many ways, where there are maybe 20 types of development really that banks like to finance, and single family homes is a really big one that makes up a lot of the development that happens along the edges of cities. So development is going to follow the path of least resistance. So if there's financing there, if we have the building industry that is focused on single family homes, it's kind of no wonder that we see suburban sprawl continue to creep outward. There is a market for it too. I mean, people do like living in the suburbs. The thing that is the problem, though, is that it's made it more challenging to develop within the core of cities. You have to get a little bit more creative there sometimes. Like here in Sioux Falls, I feel like we have some good development companies here, some that specialize in just suburban sprawl, and to get those companies to maybe learn a few new ways of development takes a little bit of time, but we're getting there. I think that's kind of a natural progression as cities evolve. Yeah, there's all sorts of tools as well to try to control suburban sprawl, and to varying degrees. It kind of depends on what a community really values and how those values get baked into the comprehensive plans for cities. And there may be cities that just they like the suburban growth, and so there really aren't very many controls to really focus growth inward and try to slow down the pace of suburban sprawl. And there's other places that have put up urban growth boundaries that really dictate how much a city can grow from year to year. And you do see more sort of infill development, redevelopment of existing areas. And, those are places where they've been able to maybe make more efficient use of their land. And so, but it is challenging too, sometimes with that. Housing costs are always something that you have to be mindful of. And I think you want to try to create an open market that allows for all types of development, really. Otherwise, you can start to see housing costs go up, and it's that can have a negative impact on cost of living, quality of life, and all that.
So you grew up in Sioux Falls, but in a more suburban part of the city, kind of on the edge of the town at the time. What was your experience growing up in a more suburban area?
Well, we had a really good neighborhood. It was right on the edge of the city, uh, but there were a lot of kids in my neighborhood, and it seemed like there was always, a group of kids kind of roaming around the neighborhood, either meeting at some kid's house to play pick up basketball, or riding our BMX bikes around, or playing hide and seek, until
Mm,
the street lights came on.
mm,
So it was a really fun childhood, but it was a little bit isolated. And so if there was anything that we wanted to do for fun, for entertainment, in the another part of town, it was a little bit challenging to do. So I ended up riding my bike everywhere when I was a kid. I was at least fortunate enough. The neighborhood that I grew up in had pretty good access to the bike trail system that we have here. And Sioux Falls is kind of unique. We had some city leaders back in the 70s really put this plan into action of creating this recreation trail that followed the river. Sioux Falls, if you look at a map of Sioux Falls, we've got the Big Sioux River that sort of does this big giant S curve through Sioux Falls, and it creates a loop around the city basically. And so
mhm.
you could get on there and you could be downtown in, you know, 20 or 30 minutes, depending on how motivated you were. You could go the other direction and go out to the mall. And so, I've got a real deep love in my heart for the bike trail system that we have, and just grateful that we had city leaders back in the 70s have that vision and put it into action. But that was my connection to the rest of the city in a lot of ways. But the neighborhood experience on the edge of the city, otherwise, it was good. It was peaceful, but sometimes maybe a little bit boring sometimes.
I'm so glad you brought up the bike trail system, and, and you say it was be, planners began to create the bike trail system in the 70s, and now 50 some years later, kids are still biking on it, and adults, and it really brings up how how profound an impact on future generations a planning decision can have.
Yeah, absolutely. If there are decisions that we will make today that will impact generations to come. And so you
That
want to
gives
try to
me
have that.
goosebumps. Wow.
Yeah. So you want to try to have good foresight, and instead, it would be just a shame to look back and say, I wish we would have taken advantage of this opportunity when we had the chance. So yeah, good planning. It's critical. Parks are just one great example of how a little bit of foresight can really make or break a park system.
You're passionate about the power of parks in public areas to really add so much to a city. Can you say more about that, please?
Sure. So when I got my master's degree, everybody has to do the equivalent of what a master's thesis is. And for the planning program, we all basically had to create professional reports, which were supposed to be sort of like comprehensive plans in a way, or at least an aspect of a comprehensive plan. So I had an opportunity to study abroad in Berlin, Germany. And the main reason why I wanted to go over there, because my best friend was living over there. And so, like, this would be great. I'll be able to spend 3 months living in Berlin with my buddy Charlie. And but I had a project to do as well. And Berlin is a really fascinating city. We can get into that a little bit more, but just specifically what I was researching at the time was looking at the sociability of public spaces. And Berlin is a city that has a lot of plazas as well. Pretty common in a lot of European cities, a lot more so than American cities. So I compared and contrasted the sociability of a plaza that is located in the former East Berlin part of the city, and then a park that was in former West Berlin. And, two very different neighborhoods as well, and just kind of looking for like what those commonalities were. And it really just sparked an interest in me of the value of public spaces and what they provide for a city, and that there are some universal design elements that can help bring people together. There's also some things that are tough to really foster social cohesion. I mean, there's other factors at play, but public spaces at least have the opportunity to create the opportunity for people to come together. And when you do that, you build stronger community. And we see that here in Sioux Falls in our park system. So like tomorrow, for example, will be the farmers market in Falls Park, and there's hundreds of people that go there for that. We've got the Levitt Shell in downtown, where we have over 50 free concerts every summer, bringing people together. And that's all about building community. And those are very active uses for public spaces, but you also see parks where they may not really have any sort of programming or design elements to create that sense of community. And it may be intentional just for it to be a passive open space where people can go and kind of make their own fun, whatever it is they want to do. That just, we as humans, we are innately want to connect with one another, right? We want to be loved. We want that sense of belonging, and parks can really be that connective tissue that brings people together and builds community.
You mentioned Levitt. Will you please describe the Levitt program a little bit for people who listening who don't have one in the town or city?
Yeah, so it was probably about maybe 11 years ago, I think, 10 or 11 years ago, that it really got off the ground as an idea. There was a gentleman who visited a city that had a Levitt pavilion, and it's free concerts. A lot of places, in warmer climates, they're able to have concerts throughout the year. Ours are concentrated to the summertime primarily, but learned about this organization that puts on these concerts, all about building community. And what they do is they're bringing in so many different genres of music too. It's not like it's all rock music or country or anything like that, which is kind of typically what we see here in Sioux Falls when it's bands touring. But the Levitt is very intentional about making sure that we have all genres, from world beat, jazz, blues, reggae, anything you can think of, any kind of style. We've had a polka band play at the Levitt as well. So, the idea is to offer a little bit of something for everyone. And they put on concerts. I think it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. every week in the summertime. And there's some people that just show up no matter what. They don't care what kind of music is playing. They want to be there. But then, there may be some music where it's like a mariachi band, and they want to try to engage people from all different types of backgrounds, and try to create those social connections between people that maybe first Americans that have not maybe necessarily felt a, an opportunity to connect with the greater community. And the Levitt provides that opportunity for a lot of folks. So it's a really special thing. It took a lot of years to plan it. There was a public fundraising campaign. This was one of those public-private partnerships. We got this band shell, if you will, built, a stage with a roof over it, basically, and this beautiful manicured lawn.
The city built the band shell.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And now we have this organization that is responsible for the fundraising to be able to put on the bands. They're responsible for booking the bands as well. It's all through sponsorships, some support from the National Levitt Foundation. But it's just a phenomenal example of how a community can come together and really enhance a specific public space, build broader community, and bring people together.
Were you involved, Joe, in creating this possibility for Sioux Falls?
More from the sidelines, I would say. I wasn't out there leading the charge, but at the time I was the president of Downtown Sioux Falls Incorporated, the organization that advocates for the betterment of downtown. And so Levitt was, a great opportunity. And so DTSF was the Downtown Sioux Falls, we call it DTSF, was shouting it from the mountaintops what a great project it was, advocating on behalf, going to city council meetings, encouraging city councilors to help fund this. But there was a lot of people that were really leading the charge on that to help make that happen. DTSF was more of a cheerleader support type of organization to help make that happen.
The story gets even better, and I think about like we can come to take the way our cities and towns look for granted. And I think about this in relation to the Levitt, because that land, I mean, when in the 80s, in the early 90s, was a scrap metal business. Nothing against scrap metal business. I mean, it's needed, but that land was private land. It was fenced off. It was inaccessible to the public, and now thousands upon thousands of people come to concerts there each summer.
Yeah. So, Jason, when I was 19 years old, I went to this 2-day community engagement event. This would have been 1993. And it was to talk about big ideas for the future. And we talked about ideas like Phillips to the Falls. Phillips Avenue is the main commercial street going through downtown, north-south. And it stopped at 5th Street because that's where the Levitt is now. That was an industrial site. You had the rail yard there. You mentioned the scrap metal business. We turned our back to the Sioux River as a community, decades ago. And it wasn't until, the 80s, the 90s, really, we started to realize, maybe we have an opportunity here with the river that we should be taking advantage of. But that 2-day event really, it changed my life. It put me on a path towards urban planning, but it also, I think, helped change the trajectory of the city. And we saw a lot of investment in Falls Park after that. Falls Park was not a great place to go. back then for various reasons. I mean, there was some pollution. There was all sorts. It just kind of felt a little seedy of an area, if you will. And those big ideas were kind of planted with community leaders, and then it was, I think, the Mayor Gary Hansen that really kind of first started giving the Phillips to the Falls idea some traction. And then Mayor Munson, who followed him, really helped make it happen, along with our congressional delegation to help get the railroad tracks out of there, put the road through. And that land kind of sat there undeveloped for several years. And, then the idea of expanding Falls Park into this area that was a former industrial site really started to take shape, and Levitt was a big part of that. And on the heels of Levitt, now you have Jacobson Family Plaza, which is this ice skating ribbon, and you have an all-inclusive playground for children and a dog park. And it's just a great example of how to take a forgotten space and really make it into something special.
Another interesting aspect of this is it's not only, I mean, it's public space, but then the business growth on either side of the space has been amazing. Could you talk a little about that?
Yeah, we've seen, well, there was a business, they still have some operations there called Sioux Steel, and the family that owns that decided that, they had some of their business operating just outside of Sioux Falls in one of the smaller communities. And so they decided to consolidate operations. I think they still have their corporate offices working out of what's left of the Sioux Steel site, but it opened up when they decided to move out. They partnered with the developer to redevelop a large portion of that. I'm not sure exactly how many acres were developed in the last 8-9 years, but I want to say it's probably close to 6 or 7 acres. Pretty big site. That's on one side of the extension of Phillips Avenue that I spoke about. Then you have on the other side 2 larger developments that have occurred in the last 15 years. One a little bit more recently. You have shopping there. You have living. You have people. I think you have something like maybe close to 600 apartments that have been created in the area over the last 15 years between the 3 developments. You've got shopping, like I said. It's just it's been a little bit of a slow burn. It's taken time for it to really take hold. So some of the businesses that opened up right away are no longer around. They're maybe just a little bit too ahead of the curve. But now you have this critical mass of people there that are really helping sustain the businesses, and it's become a very thriving part of downtown.
What words of encouragement would you give to someone listening to this in a town or city where they're like, where they're like thinking of where they live, and they're like, there's so much room for improvement. These things don't work. This thing is really ugly. What would you say to people?
Yeah, I think that sometimes people feel a little bit, like powerless, or like they're one person, they can't make a difference. So if you're living in a town where you see an opportunity for improvement, I think that there's some great examples out there of other places where people have come together, they have improved an area on their own, and then that action alone starts to create some momentum. And then you see maybe the municipal government come along and start to really be a catalyst for even larger change. So there's a guy that went to Europe. His name is Jason Roberts, and he's kind of provides a really great example for this. He lives in a suburb of Dallas, and there's this neighborhood that he lived in that was kind of run down. It wasn't very beautiful, just a lot of concrete, not a whole lot of vegetation. And he thought, Europe wasn't like this. Why did Europe have these beautiful sidewalk cafes and flowers everywhere? And so he basically went to this small little neighborhood commercial area near his house and started talking to the businesses and the property owners. And he said, "Hey, what if we put flower baskets everywhere? What if we decide to paint a mural? What if we decide to put chairs out and do some sidewalk cafes and things like that?" And didn't necessarily seek permission or from the city or consult with the municipal code as to what was legally allowed and what wasn't. He came to find out that some of the things that he did not comply with the municipal code. But what he did is he brought these city councilors out to experience this place. And, they had a big event around it. And they're all like, "This is great. I love this." And then he pointed out to them, "Yeah, you know what? A lot of this stuff is actually illegal." And so they're like, "Oh, well, we got to change that." And so that really kind of started this movement. There's other people that have done similar things, a lot of parallel thinking with other folks in other parts of the country. Mike Leiden is another guy who's taken a similar approach, but they went on to start their own organizations to work with neighborhoods, to work with cities, to help improve places, kind of doing one-off pilot projects. And a lot of times what they do is they use the materials around them. They're using, a lot of times just cheap materials to just do a pilot project and show, what a place could be. It's not necessarily busting up concrete and pouring in new streetscaping with, big, beautiful planters and things like that. It's just taking a little step in that direction and showing proof of concept. And then you can get a city to come on board to help make it more of a permanent change. And there's some examples of DTSF doing some of that in over the last decade too, where there's been some permanent improvements made in downtown. So they really, I mentioned those two guys and their organizations as great examples for other places to look how to really affect change.
So speaking of change, sometimes a planning thing like good minds get together, they think of something and then implement it and it doesn't work out right or the way they hope. Would you please talk a little bit about the pedestrian mall that was in Phillips Avenue at one point?
Yeah, that was an interesting period in downtown's history. And there were a lot of places throughout the country that had pedestrian malls. That was, I don't know, for whatever reason, that was a big fad in the 70s, was to create pedestrian malls. And there are quite a few that are still around. There's an interesting YouTube video out there. I wish I could remember it, but people might be able to find it. I want to say there was something like over 200 pedestrian malls created in the 70s, but there still is close to, well, there's several dozen that still exist to this day. They tend to be in places that are like college towns, resort communities, places like that, for whatever reason. But in Sioux Falls, we took the 3 blocks of Phillips Avenue, where the most historic buildings were, or still are, I should say. And we closed the street down and put in this. Yeah, it was a pedestrian mall, and some of my earliest memories as a kid are going down there with my mom. My dad had a business downtown, and my mom would take my brother and I down there quite frequently for when she would do her shopping. And so I remember playing on playground equipment in the middle of Phillips Avenue.
Yeah.
But it was quiet down there. It was a much different downtown too. We didn't really have as many mixed use buildings. We didn't have as many people living downtown, and it was more of an 8 to 5 business district than sort of more of a mixed use district that it is today. So that was a little bit of a detriment to the ground floor retail that was on Phillips Avenue at the time with the pedestrian mall, because people had to park, a block away or so, and then walk. And, that's one of the things that is often cited as the reason why it didn't work. I think there's some truth in that. However, I would say it had more to do with what kind of downtown Sioux Falls was back then. Just the fact that we are more of a mixed use downtown today is, it's just very different. We have close to 5,000 people living downtown. I think Sioux Falls downtown would be the 20th largest city in South Dakota if it was its own municipality. Back then, I think it was only a few hundred people living downtown. So just that change alone, I think would, if we had those kind of residents living downtown back then, I think that the pedestrian mall might have been more successful at that time. But the decision was made to tear it out and put traffic through on Phillips Avenue. You look at history, and it's sort of like this pendulum that swings back and forth. And I think that now we're hearing some people are saying we need to close Phillips Avenue down again. And there are some experiments that are being done where there's temporary street closures and activations with events, doing street fairs and having artists come out and do performances and things like that with food trucks and so on. And so, we'll see where that goes. But we're seeing that pendulum, it swung from being the pedestrian mall to, bringing traffic back. And it kind of feels like it's starting to swing back a little bit right now. So that's a little bit of the history of the old pedestrian mall in downtown.
Thanks. You were speaking about what the change that one person created in Dallas by encouraging businesses, which made me think of sometimes a change that brings a lot of energy to downtown doesn't require much of any money at all. I think of the burger battle and how much excitement that brings to the whole region. Would you please talk a little about that?
Sure. So when I started as president at DTSF, it was 2015, and Burger Battle. So Downtown Sioux Falls Incorporated was basically, it's the organization that keeps Sioux Falls clean and beautiful and safe and active. And so we do that a couple of different ways. One of the ways that we activated downtown was with promotions, and Burger Battle was one that I think it was created the year before I started. It kind of limped along for a few years. We would maybe only have 6 restaurants participating. So we really took a moment, paused, and said, all right, what do we got to do to make this event more successful? We wanted to at least make sure that we tried everything, because there are events and promotions that don't work out, and we actually had talked about doing away with Burger Battle before it was really successful.
Wow.
But the decision was, we're gonna double down on it. We're gonna see if we can make it successful, and then we'll reassess. And so we really leaned into the process and made sure that all the restaurants had ample opportunity to participate. We redid the marketing, and with that, it started to get some traction. We got doubled the number. We got 12 restaurants participating. Then the next year we had 17, and every year we've seen more and more restaurants participating. I moved on from DTSF in 2024. I think last year there was something like 50 restaurants participating. I mean, it has just developed into this cultural phenomenon, and you've got people that are renting party buses and going around and trying to sample as many burgers as they can over the course of a Saturday with groups of people. People are posting all about it, giving their ratings online. So it lasts all during the month of January. The intent was really just to try to bring some activity to downtown during that month. And it's been just wildly successful, cultural phenomenon, really. And it's really helped build a community in a lot of ways and help sustain businesses during a month that normally was, really quiet. January is very cold here in Sioux Falls. If for those listeners that haven't been to Sioux Falls in January, it can be a little hostile at times because of the cold weather. But Burger Battle has really turned that around. And, I think it was maybe 2022, I think. Downtown Sioux Falls actually received an award from the International Downtown Association for Burger Battle, recognized as just this award-winning promotion. So it's come a long way, and it's been a lot of fun to be a part of that ride.
I mean, it's so brilliant. Like it would seem like restaurants after the bustle of December shopping and stuff would dread January, and then the slowness, and it's so miserable outside. But instead, there's this excitement and huge economic benefit to all these businesses, I'm sure.
Yeah, and retailers are finding ways to get involved as well. There's one retailer that partnered with a restaurant where if you brought in a receipt from the restaurant, you'd get a discount on your purchase. So there's all sorts of ways to kind of create some sort of cross-pollination, if you will, between the businesses. There's one coffee shop that did a burger themed latte, and there's a cupcake shop that did a burger cupcake. It did not have actual beef patty in it. It just looked like a burger. So I mean, the entire business community downtown is finding new and creative ways to get involved and play off of the burger theme. Oh, and I will say, there are some amazing burgers too that restaurants have come up with. I don't know if you remember one year, Minerva's, the restaurant down there, had an ice cream, a root beer float burger. There's been a s'mores burger. And, at first you're like, I don't know, but you try them and they're surprisingly good. So
So something like this doesn't cost much money, brings a huge
Yeah.
amount of energy to an area at a time when they need it. And then it fosters community and it fosters creativity. I bet no one before Burger Battle was thinking, oh, how do I make a root beer float themed burger?
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
so, so Joe, like you're going along in life. You're having successes. I mean, downtown Sioux Falls is booming. How does one go from just going along from life and things are going well? How does one go from that to thinking, I want to run for mayor. I want to take on this huge challenge of campaigning, and how does one do that? How do you do that, I guess?
Well, it's something, I mean, the first step was, yeah, really getting my wife on board with the idea, to tell you the truth. And I think she was a little bit apprehensive at first, but I just, like we discussed before, my background is in urban and regional planning, and I felt a little bit limited at downtown Sioux Falls, and I just, I live in a neighborhood close to downtown, and I would see the neighborhood association struggle at times with trying to affect change. And it was kind of frustrating, for various reasons. I think, there's issues in the neighborhood that the neighborhood association have been trying to address for years and years. And sometimes they just were not getting the sort of answers that they were hoping for with the city. I think that the city sometimes is very well intentioned, but it's sometimes they have a playbook, a protocol that they go by, and it's hard when those expectations don't meet. So um, I just I think there's a lot of opportunity to. I saw a lot of opportunity to make Sioux Falls an even better place, to make government work a little bit better. Sioux Falls is a fantastic city. Don't get me wrong. I think that there's just some opportunities that we can take advantage of. We have so much potential as a city, and I see things that are working in other places that we haven't even tried here yet, that I think would make this place an even greater city to call home. And so, it's sort of, there's this Japanese term called ikigai that means when what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs all lines up together. That's kind of your sweet spot. And I feel like running for mayor is it for me, really. I feel like I can make a positive impact. I love cities. I love Sioux Falls. And I'm good with urban planning and policy and design, and I think that I can help move the city forward. So having that belief is also critical, and then bringing other people on board. I've got some great people in my life that are very supportive of me, that are part of my brain trust, that are helping me along this process. And I didn't really have any idea how to run a campaign. I've got a childhood friend that I'm working with who's worked on a ton of campaigns, who's just been an invaluable resource, and I couldn't do it without him. My brother has some experience in politics as well, more on the background side, policy side. So, having someone who is politically savvy is critical as well, because I'm not really. I'm relying on those experts. So it's sort of kind of this perfect alignment of where talent, opportunity, the network that I have are all kind of aligning right now. And, hopefully I feel like I've run a good race, and hopefully the voters agree. And that's sort of how I've ended up where I'm at right now. It's been a really fun process.
As I talk to you, I feel a sense of optimism and hope for the future, and hope of creating solutions to problems that actually feel good, and make things more vibrant, and create better communities. What was as we start to close, what words of encouragement would you give people at this time in history
Yeah.
about the future? I'm sorry, that's a really broad question, but
Well, yeah, there is a lot of, I think, just, I think people are anxious right now for a lot of reasons. I mean, we've seen just vastly broad technological changes that have occurred in the last 5 years, even with AI. And, I think that the political landscape right now is just like none we've ever seen before. I think that there is more that unites us than divides us, though. And I think people want to feel that unity. I would say that, Jason, when I go downtown, uh, I can run into people that I know hold completely different political views than I do, that hold completely different opinions than I do, but we can still break bread together. We can still sit down over a cup of coffee and have a conversation. And I think that the narrative that you see out there on national media, whether that's Fox News or MS Now or any of those, whatever sort of perspective. I think that it's totally different than what people are actually experiencing in their cities. And I think the cities that have those sociable places, those parks, those plazas, the opportunities for community to flourish the most are the ones where you really feel it the most. And I get that feeling every day when I go downtown. I get that feeling when I go to other parts of the city too, where people are coming together and enjoying their company. I think it's really important for people of different backgrounds to have those opportunities to mix, and cities provide that. And so I would just encourage people, if you feel disconnected from your community, get involved, go volunteer for an organization, make a new friend, and volunteering is a great way to do that. I think that just those social connections are what are going to help move us forward in so many ways. So I am optimistic about the future. And I think cities offer a lot of solutions for us moving forward. So I'm very hopeful.
I asked for something inspiring, and you delivered. Thank you. And just one more question, and I ask this to all my guests. Joe, what does doing your imperfect best mean to you?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Well, just trying. You know, I'm 52 now, and I used to be a little bit of a perfectionist when I was a kid, and I was afraid to fail a lot of times. But when I uh, started at DTSF back in 2015, I had kind of gotten over that already, and also when you're leading a downtown organization with multiple stakeholders, you have property owners, business owners, residents, the city, and so on. you have all these different expectations, and a lot of times they don't align, and you have to just, like, I was just committed to the mission, and a lot of times it's more about just building momentum, getting inertia, and trying things, and understanding that, yeah, things are going to fail, but you learn from it, and how you learn from it and move on is what matters. And so, just knowing that, I think people just need to see the value in trying things and learning from them and moving on, because honestly, I feel like that's really what has led to a lot of the success in downtown Sioux Falls, a lot of the success in my life. It may not always look pretty from the outside looking in, but when you look at the course of history of the trajectory of progression, whether that's a place or a person, the progress is apparent. And so, yeah, I would say just not to get hung up on imperfection, that it's more about action.
Oh, inspiring. Thanks so much for being on the show, Joe. And please stay on just for a sec as I wrap up, because just things need to upload. And
Sure.
thanks for all of you for tuning in and thinking about what Joe's saying, and I hope you felt some inspiration. I sure did, and please tune in next week for another episode of Ugly Awesome Podcast. Or if you're watching a 1,000 years from now, you might have to watch reruns. Anyway, take care and remember to smile.